Hello, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich begashmis beruchnis. Hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Vayishlach. This past week was Tes and Yud Kislev, days that were connected to the Mittler Rebbe of Chabad, the second leader. Yud Kislev was his holiday of liberation. This coming Friday Shabbos is going to be Yud Tes Chof Kislev, is the Chag HaGeula, the day of liberation of the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe. And this coming Sunday is Yud Dalet Kislev, the wedding anniversary of our Rebbe. So what's the connection between all these things and Parshas Vayishlach? As usual, we'll start first with Tzedakah, since the war started. We should come to the ultimate Geula, the ultimate redemption of Mashiach Tzidkenu right now. The war should be over and peace in the whole world. Today we're actually going to discuss the most existential issue in our lives in Yiddishkeit. And we'll start with the prayer this time, with the essence of what we're going to be talking about. And that's in Tehillim, Kapitel Nun Hey, Pasuk Yud Tes, Pada b'shalem nafshi mikrav li ki berabim hayu imodi. David HaMelech says, He redeemed my soul in peace from battles drawing near me for the sake of masses who were with me. So this pasuk tells us about how David HaMelech was redeemed in peace. So today we're going to talk about as many Hasidic discourses connected to Yud Tes Kislev and Yud Kislev start with this verse of Pada b'shalem nafshi mikravli. My soul was redeemed in peace from the battles. And what we're going to discuss today is what I believe is the source of all our understanding of struggle and being victorious, and what lessons do we take from it in our daily lives. So in this week's parsha is one of the most famous passages in all of Torah, and people love it because there's a discussion itself whether it was a literal. Did it happen literally? I'm not getting into it right now, but the commentaries speak about it. And that's the story of the struggle with Yaakov and the angel. And the pasuk says that Yaakov went back to get the jug. Vayavosi Yaakov levadai. He remained alone. And then it says, Vayavosi Yaakov levadai vayovek ish imoi. And a man wrestled with him ad alois hashachat, until the break of dawn. Rashi straight away on the word Vayovek, and a man wrestled with him, and Rashi explains that what does it mean wrestling? It's an Aramaic word, and he says Basad Avikubei, after they became bound up with it. Vavakle mevek, and tied them in a bow, and then he says Shekain derech shnayim shemis atzmim lahapel ishes ha'eyu, where this is the way of two people who are struggling to topple each other, that one hugs and ties up the other with his arms. And Pirsha Rabbi said, and our sages say that this man was the ministering angel of Esav. So there's so many questions over here. And Yaakov fights with this angel, and then he's victorious. And then the verse says later on, something which is a very unusual lashon, that the angel wounded Yaakov with the thigh bone. And then it finishes, Al kain leyechlu bnei Yisrael is gidan nosha shal kaf yerech, adei mazeh ki noga bekaf yerech Yaakov begidan nosha. Therefore, the children of Israel are not to eat the displaced sinew on the ball of the thigh bone to this day, because he struck the ball of Yaakov's thigh bones on the displaced sinew. So Yaakov was limping, and then he got up and he walked away. And later on, as a matter of fact, just to finish the narrative right now, the pasuk says later on, when Yaakov returned from this whole journey, it says that Yaakov Vayovoi, Yaakov Sholem, Yaakov came intact to the city of Shechem. Yaakov Shalom Yeshchem, Asher Beretz Canaan, B'vay mi Padanam. Anyways, and Rashi says, what does it mean he came Shalom, intact? Shenesrape mitzaloisai, for he was cured of his limp. Shalom b'mamoinai, he was intact regarding his money. Shleish chasakum, he didn't miss anything. He didn't lose anything. Mikol oisai doirin, as a result of the gift which he gave to Esav. Shalom b'terosai, he was intact in his Torah. Shleish shachach talmud b'beis Lavan, that while he was in the house of Lavan, he did not forget what he had learned from his father, and he didn't forget that learning at all. Okay, so basically I told you the story, and to learn from the lessons over here, amazing lessons in our day-to-day service, and how it relates to the history of the Jewish people in general. So, there is one commentary that explains to us, this is the Chinuch, and the Ramban writes something similar, because the question over here is, like, why do we make such a big deal of this, that we have a commemoration? And as the pasuk says, which is so unusual, and I haven't seen any commentaries that really get into it, it's an unusual lashon to say, Al kein lo yechlu b'nei Yisrael sagid l'nosha shal kaf yerech ad hayom hazeh, till this very day. This is one of the 613 commandments. It's a lav, a biblical prohibition that we're not allowed to eat the sciatic nerve till this very day of an animal because of the story that happened with Yaakov. It's unusual for two reasons. First, the way the pasuk says, and because of this, till this very day, we don't eat it. How come we don't find that about any of the other mitzvahs that it says, until this very day, we don't do this and this? Second of all, that it should say an actually commandment connected to an event. It's very unusual. Like, for example, when it comes to the mitzvah of sukkahs, it says that we have to sit in a sukkah. Why? Because the Eibishter put us to l'man yedu b'sukkahs hishaftes b'nei Yisrael. So we should know that we were in huts when we went out of Egypt. So over there too, all the commentators make a big to-do about it, that in this commandment, the kavanah is important because the Torah itself explicitly says that the reason why we sit in the sukkah is because the Eibusha took us out of the sukkah. So we're meant to have that intention in mind, even though usually when it comes to commandments, we don't have to have a particular intention in mind, a kavanah pratis, only a kavanah klolis. As an exception is the mitzvah of sukkahs, that since the pasuk itself explicitly states the reason, we're meant to also have that kavanah pratis in mind when we sit in the sukkah. Similarly over here, when it says about the not eating, so it's a loisa say, it's a non-action, we should remember that till this very day we don't eat the sciatic nerve because the ministering angel of Esav wounded us in that spot. Why is this so important to remember? Why is this, of all the struggles of the whole Chumash, there's so many stories, fighting Eg Melech HaBashan, there's Koz Yosher, there's facing this Kriyas Yamsuf, this Bolok, this Bilam. The story, which is really, and that's the answer, the source of all sources of struggles really starts from here. And this is the archetype. The Sori Shalesa represents all the forces for all time that will be against the Jewish nation. And this also represents the inner struggle of every single person. So let's start step by step. First of all, the Lashon over here that it says that he wrestled. Now what does it mean wrestling? Vayavik ish imay. He wrestled. And over here, the way Rashi says it, that this is the way that two people are struggling, shemis atzmim lahab, that shechayvkai va'ayvkai, which means we're interlocked and intertwined. Every step you take, every move you make, your nefesh ha'ba'amis, your yetzer hara is there. That is the point of wrestling. And this is what Chassidus, on the verses of this pasuk of Pod b'shalom nafshi mikrovli, we say that battle is called mikrov, from the word kiruv. Not like today, where you press a button and you have a missile that's going to travel 2,000 miles and blow up a cave in Afghanistan and you killed 3 cows, whatever the story is. So it could be from a distance that you're fighting the war. But in the olden days, Pada b'shalom nafshi mikrovli, a battle was up close and personal, with swords and spears, and God forbid, bodily harm, and painful, etc. And this is the message to a person who's dealing with his animal soul, with his nefesh habahamis, or with his yetzer hara. You have to know that it's up close and personal. And like two people wrestling, when you see two people wrestling, sometimes you can't even tell exactly which limb belongs to which body and what's going on over there. They're so attached and interlocked and intertwined. And that's the message. You should know, my friends, everyone's yetzer hara, everyone's animal soul is a genius. What does it mean it's a genius? It's a fool because it's going the wrong path. But it's a genius because it was custom made. One person is struggling with ego. His animal soul comes to him and says, "You're the king of the world. You're the most important person in the world. You're number 1, 2, and 3. You're the master of the universe. You're not getting enough respect. You deserve a lot more respect. You deserve the whole world." So that's one person's yetzer hara. That person is custom made. You know, like when you put on a custom-made suit, it fits every single part of your body. It's adjusted to the millimeter. It's perfect fit. Like the person who tells you were born to wear this suit. This suit was made for you to wear. That's your nefesh habahamis. Mikrovli. It was designed to be your competition, to bring out the best in you. On the other hand, you have another person's nefesh habahamis who tells him you're worthless. You're a piece of garbage. You didn't accomplish anything in life. You will never accomplish anything in life, etc., etc. So it's from one extreme to the other extreme. This person's nefesh habahamis comes along and says, "You're master of the universe," and it's an arrogance and it's an ego that's through the ceiling, through the roof. And this person makes him feel like a lowest piece of dirt that exists on this planet Earth. And that's the point. You have to realize that you're obviously the intention of them both is to hamper you, that you shouldn't do what you're meant to be doing. But this is what you have to remember. Vayev Yovek, like Rashi says, it's like a wrestling match. It's totally designed to stop you and prevent you from doing what you have to do. So that's number one. We have to know the lesson of Pada b'shalom nafshi mikrovli. It's right there with you at all times and trying to trap you up and trying to stop whatever you're meant to be doing positive in this world and your mission. I said this many times. There was once a rabbi, a master, and he told his disciples, remember that your animal soul is like a highwayman who's behind chasing your wagon and wants to jump into your wagon. He's standing over your head with a hatchet, ready to chop off your head. So one of the disciples of the Chassidic master said, but master, what happens if I don't feel that way? So then the master said, so then that's the biggest proof. He already chopped off your head. So that's the point. Be alert. Okay, now we're going to get to the message of the chinuch over here. What is the point of this mitzvah? And why it's so important? And from the fact that the pasuk writes in such a way, therefore, till this very day, I believe that means that we have to pay attention to this. Obviously, the kulaba when it comes to the entire Torah, but the very fact that the Torah writes it in such a way by this mitzvah means that it's even more obvious and it's a more revealed way and explicit the relevance adayim hazeh till this very day. So the meaning, the way it's explained from the chinuch, is unbelievable. And this answers the question. I'll tell you the truth. I always marveled on this concept. I always wondered about it for many, many years, and I still marvel at it. And that is, there's the famous article of Mark Twain, where he wrote about the Jews, that there were many empires, there were many kingdoms. You have to look it up yourself. Mark Twain, about the Jews or on the Jews. And he says many empires rose, the Syrians, the Assyrians, the Greeks, the Romans, and they beat the Jew and they hunted Jews, and the Jew had with his hands behind his back, he survived. And not only that, without diminishing any of his faculties. By now he should be powdered duff in the galaxy. See how he writes the words. But he ends off the famous article by saying, what is the secret of their immortality? And it's a good question. What is the secret of our immortality? And the answer is obvious, because we have a neshama. We are a chelik elikami mal mamish. So just as Hashem is eternal, so too the Jewish people are eternal. But the question is, how did we know this? In other words, what sustained the Jewish people through thousands and thousands of years of persecution, oppression, exile, and tragedies? How did the Jew keep the spirit to know that we will win? And not only will we win, we are invincible. We're indestructible. How did we know this? And I always wondered this also myself. It's a medrash. It's a maimer azal. How do we know this? And the answer is, according to the chinuch, we know this because this was the meaning behind the mitzvah. In other words, from this story with Yaakov Avinu, from that day onward, the Torah writes that we don't eat from the Gid HaNosher. Why? And this was passed on from generation to generation. From the days of Yaakov Avinu, we don't eat the Gid HaNosher because of what happened. And what happened is that a Jew could get wounded in battle. We're going to suffer a wound. Yaakov limps, but then one day, the sun will rise, which represents Mashiach, but it represents that there's always going to be a situation where the Jew could be down, but never out. So whatever comes, through whatever terrible happenings that happened throughout the whole history of the Jewish nation, we always knew from this story of Yaakov with the angel that there's going to be a situation. We can get a wound, we can get a punch in our solar plexus, so to speak, and we might be down, but never out. And this is the story of Yaakov. He gets touched, wounded in his Gid HaNosher, but he ends up Yaakov Sholem, as Rashi says later, that he was healed from that limp. So this is an amazing, amazing point, and that's what it means that the Jews knew this. We knew this, and this was passed on from every generation to generation. Now, did every single Yid know it? Every single Yid knew it, like every single Yid knew anything else. It's one of the 613 mitzvahs. That is the meaning of that mitzvah. And this was passed on from generation to generation, because we kept that mitzvah from then onward. Even though the real halachic obligation is because it was given to us on Mount Sinai. But we see from this pasuk that we started keeping it from then. And the narrative and the story that happened from then, as it says in our Torah, was passed on from generation to generation forever. Okay, now let's discuss some other aspects of the mitzvah. It's interesting that we celebrate it, we commemorate it, not by doing something. We don't make a celebration, a Thanksgiving's dinner, so to speak, to remember this miracle and this lesson for all time, that no matter what, we shall survive and we shall win. So maybe one aspect to it is that according to Chassidus, another aspect over here is that Yaakov is hit in the thigh. Many commentators speak about it. I'm just going to give one aspect as explained in Derech Mitzisecha from the Tzemach Tzedek, where he says that what Netzach, there's an attribute called Netzach. Netzach means victorious. But there's Chabad, Chagas, and Nihi. Chabad is Chochmah Bin Das, represents the intellect. Chagas, Chesed Gvur Tferes, represents the emotions. And then Nihi, Netzach Chod Yesod, represents more the action-oriented ability to carry through something. So what's explained in Hasidic philosophy is that, what does it mean that we get hit in our netzach, in the thigh region, so to speak, that means a person who's not inspired. He's not inspired, not on a Chabad level. He's not enlightened. He doesn't understand necessarily, appreciate the depth to something in Judaism. On an intellectual level, check the intellectual box, empty. The same thing is on an emotional level. He's not invested on an emotional level. He's not passionate about it. He's not excited about it. He's not enthusiastic about it. But he has this idea that he's still doing it. So there's a paradox over here. Like, tradition. He keeps it. Mitzvahs Anoshim L'Moda. This is what his parents told him. It's important. He's doing it. But he might not have like we said, the Chabad is out. He's not inspired intellectually. The Chagas is out. He's not inspired emotionally. But still, actually, in actuality, he's doing it. But this is the paradox. When a person is not inspired, he doesn't have the fuel, and he doesn't appreciate the depth. So what happens is sometimes it's like it becomes dry. It becomes lame, it becomes mechanical, and therefore you're vulnerable. And that's what it means that the Sori Shel Esa, when a person doesn't have the Chabad dimension to it at all, on zero, and he doesn't have the Chagas aspect at all, also on zero, so when you're left just with the dry action, you should know that sometimes that's where a person can get affected. It might stop him completely. So therefore, we don't eat the Gidanosha. That's like saying we're taking a picture of where there was a vulnerability. And by not eating that, that's like the warning signal that says, don't be a person that is not involved totally. Try to make it an immersive experience. Your Judaism shouldn't be only dry, because if it's going to be just dry, without fuel, without fire, without passion, then it could be in the end, it'll just dry up completely. And that's why this is part of the lesson over here also. Not only the fact that we survived, and that's the main message, and that answers us about the very existential idea that we started off speaking about today, the immortality of the Jew, wow. But there's also another message to the mitzvah, which is to beware, be on guard, be alert. What's the vulnerability? Where are you weak? Where are you susceptible to be harmed? And that's also part of the mitzvah, as we explained from the Tzemach Tzedek. Now, we explained the connection between Yutes Kislev and Yud Kislev, because the Mittel Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe both, it says, according to the way we were told, and the Alter Rebbe himself said it, and the Mittel Rebbe also, that when they were in prison and they actually said Psalms, and they came to the verse, Poda b'shalom nafshi, mikravli, ki berabim hayu madi, they were notified that they're free, that the decree for being put in imprisonment is being taken away. So this is the lesson. Number one, you have to always beware, mikrav, how you have in the inner struggle that's going on in every single one of us. We have to realize that each one of us has a custom-made adversary that Hashem made in order for us to be victorious over it, and we have the power to be victorious over it. But we have to realize that it's always there, mikrav. But it's going to be Pada B'Shalom. The whole point is, if you're connected to the right weapons of Torah and Tefillah and Gamach, so then you'll be able to overcome all adversity. And we have to know also, I want to speak about what we're living through now, historic times. What happened this week is so unbelievable. Getting back to Mark Twain's article, my friends, we're living in miraculous times. He wrote, there's been the Romans and the Assyrians. 2 weeks ago, my friend, if you would ask anybody on this planet Earth, including the intelligence of the Israeli army, that we will, in 2 weeks' time, be able to completely wipe out the threat level of a country that has been our enemy for more than a half a century, and will be able to do without losing one life, you would say, no way. No one on this planet Earth anticipated what happened with Syria this week. And they say that even the rebels that were involved, the different factions, had no idea, because they thought they're going to first take over this city and that city, but they didn't believe that all of a sudden Assad will leave and the whole country will be abandoned and that they'll be able to take over the entire country. And look at what the Vayishlach did for Eretz Yisrael, that he's taken out the entire capabilities of that country to be able to cause harm to Eretz Yisrael, etc. So this is definitely a miracle, and a miracle that no one anticipated. And therefore it's a miracle, because if you would have spoken like this 3 weeks ago to somebody, they would say, you're off your mind, you're out of your mind. So the Vayishlach should help that, just like we saw this miracle, we should see more miracles in the future. No loss of life, and it should be put b'shalom nafshi. Now, I somewhere, I forgot right now offhand, I remember when the Rebbe once spoke about this Rashi, where it says, Vayova Yaakov Sholem, it says he was complete, that he didn't lose any of his money, and his body was physically healed, and he didn't lose any of his Torah. If I remember correctly, the Rebbe makes a diuk in Rashi over there, that when it comes to the body, first he was limping. So there's a temporary diminishing, there's a temporary loss, so to speak. And the same thing is when it comes to the finances, he had to give away something first, but in the end, he didn't lose anything. But when it comes to the Torah part, the spiritual part, there's no loss even to begin with, because there's nothing on this world physical, there's nothing on this physical world that could touch spirituality, something which is spiritual. And this we have to remember, the famous talk that the Rebbe Rashab, the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe, gave, and then the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, gave it on the day when he was sent into exile, a famous talk which starts nit mit unser Willen sein wir weg von Eretz Yisrael und nit mit unsere Keuches, wenn wir zurückkommen können Eretz Yisrael. He said, not with our own powers were we driven from Israel, from Eretz Yisrael, and not with our own powers will we come back. I'm not going to read you what he said there, but I just want to remember I just want to read one paragraph over here. Aber das darfen alle Amim v'zana pnei Adama wissen. And this all the nations of the world have to know. As nor unsere Gufim seinen übrig geben in Golos v'shibud malchis. Only our bodies are given over to the servitude and to exile of other nations. Aber unsere Neshames, but our souls, hat man in Golos nicht vertrieben. Our souls are not in exile. And in Shibud Malchis nicht übrig geben. And we were not given over to the servitude of other nations. In other words, when it comes really to the soul, and the neshama is always connected. And this is the message we learn from this week's parasha, from the Gir HaNosha, about the immortality of the Jew, is because we have a special connection, and we have a special soul, and we have to keep on emphasizing the superiority of that soul, and we bring out more and more of that connection, so then we'll see more and more also in the physical sense, how it's going to be completely Pada B'Sholem Nafshi Makrovli. And as the song over there ends and the kapitel ends, Va'ani eftar boch, Va'ani eftar boch. We have to just increase our trust in Hashem. And we'll see, as we saw this week, miracles that we never imagined would happen, happening before our very eyes. And this all is connected with the more we put betochen in Hashem and go in the ways that He told us to go, then the more we will see the good results. Be well, and this is also, I just realized the connection to the Rebbe's Chasana is that the Rebbe, more than any other leader, spoke about this idea also of influencing the non-Jewish world, also something of Mashiach, as we say in this week's Haftorah, Va'olam Mishim B'Hat Tziyam Lishv'Tzad Esav. So, with the Rebbe becoming the leader of our generation, it started something new completely that never happened before. How the Rebbe also spoke about the concept of Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach having an impact on the non-Jewish world to keep their 7 mitzvahs. So in any case, we should all do what we're meant to do, and this will bring the Geula Mitzvah Shleima take of me ad mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.